Video games journalism as a whole is in a bit of a tough place at the moment. Revenues are down across the board, there aren't as many advertising opportunities, and more importantly, a lot of people just don't trust people in video games journalism anymore, which I think is unfair. Video games journalism is one of the hardest jobs in the world, and here are 5 reasons why it is so.
Number 5. Too many games.
By far the biggest problem facing video games journalism today, and the journalists themselves, is of course the fact that there are just too many games to play. As a journalist, you will receive free video games all the time, and you will receive them early. You will also have access to press accounts from various online storefronts where you can literally click on almost any game you want and it just appears in your cart for free. Most normal people have this same sort of thing, only to a lesser degree, with the so-called pile of shame. But we games journalists, of course, have it much harder. The situation has become so bleak that I've actually developed a name for the feeling of helplessness when you go to play a game, but you know before you've even got into your library that you'll never be able to choose one, and you just sit there paralysed. It's the preemptive non-interaction syndrome, or PENIS. Normal people, of course, can experience PENIS too, but as I've said with games journalists, it's just much more acute. Simply put, games journalists are just far more disposed to be penises.
Number 4. Having to play games early.
Of course, one of the biggest problems in video games journalism is that we get to play games before normies, or normal people as they're known. We get to be invited to wherever we want at almost any time to play video games because we're so important. But this has a backlash, in that once we've played the games, if we want to play them again at home, we have to play through the bits we've already played. There's a technical reason for this, of course, in that saves between builds don't carry over whether they're retail or debug. But the net effect is that once again the games journalist suffers, and when they get home with their free retail version years later, they have to play through it again.
Number 3. International travel.
Press trips are like holidays, except not really at all, because while you're out there, you still actually have to go and do work, mainly for people who hate you, sort of like being married. And just like marriage, these sorts of issues crop up all the time, whether you're flying to Cologne, whether you're getting the Eurostar to Paris, or, as is more likely, especially this time of year, whether you're getting a plane across the Atlantic to America. The last one, America, is the biggest problem, fittingly, mainly because I'm a tall man, and when I have to sit in economy that someone else has paid for, my knees often hit the chair in front, and when I ask for a beer, they always bring one round in a tiny can rather than a full-size can, and they don't bring dinner whenever I want. And I always think to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I wasting my life flying out to America to play games that no one's played before? Why am I doing that? Why is this happening? It's a chore. And then when you arrive in these places, invariably you're in New York or California. Nothing is more symptomatic of the lack of imagination in video games these days than headquarters for major corporations still being in the same places they were when you went before. Come on guys, make our jobs easier.
Number 2. Tiny food.
One of the most curious things about being a video game journalist and working this fine and noble job is that the food is always really tiny. Like most games journalists, my eating habits are perfectly in sync with the many preview events that go around, a happy accident of just being based in London, where the games press is obviously at its peak, unlike, I don't know, Edinburgh? Anyway, perhaps it's an affectation of food and food design in the 21st century, but I always find whenever I go to eat anywhere in London, the burgers are really small. Why are they so small? I mean, I need to eat. What? I mean, you've seen these, Jim, right?
Number 1. You.
So far I've outlined some of the biggest problems facing us, games journalists, so far in the 21st century. I've always thought that our job is slightly harder than being an astronaut, but slightly easier than being a firefighter. And I still think that. I still think there is worth in us going places and telling you what to think. However, I will say one thing. The biggest problem in games journalism these days is you.
That was good, Steve.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah, I was just going to say about the whole tiny food thing. Like, I've noticed that so many times. Have you ever had fish and chips at a press event?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
it's really fucked. Like, the ratio is all totally off because they bulk up on the chips.
Honestly.
And then the fish is fucking tiny. Have you noticed that?
And you're there with the person, like, what the fuck's this about?
Yeah, you're like, I got a fucking train here for 20 minutes and you're not fucking feeding me properly. And it's like, this is all carbs. Like, also, like, you remember the other day we were at that event and they were doing Scotch eggs and everyone was like, oh, fuck, cracking Scotch eggs, some proper fucking grub for once. And you get it, it's tiny and it's a fucking quail's egg in it instead of a normal, like a chicken's egg. Like, the fucking liberty of it.
Nah, that's bollocks, mate. I'm
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
I'm leaving.
I'm quitting.
Lists. You like lists? Click on the left for 7 things to expect from E3, or click on the right for 7 things not to expect from E3. And remember to like, share, and subscribe.